Today we're going to be looking at electronical forms and how to make them. So please note that this is on a Mac, but it actually works just as well on a PC. Same buttons, same everything, same software. We're going to be looking at two variations of software today, InDesign and Acrobat. You don't need InDesign, but I'm going to be showing you how to create the part of the form needed to create the electronical form of it. So in other words, if you have a form already hanging around that was outdated or something like that, it also works well with this workflow. But we're going to be looking at, how to create the form from scratch. So File, New, Document. Take off facing pages, 8.5 by 11, and 0.5 margins is fine too. Now I'm not going to create a whole form because it would be very boring to watch, but I'm going to show you some of the advantages of using InDesign to create your forms. One, let's create a text box. Okay, we'll call it name. Okay. With the black arrow, I could take and stretch out this box and make it a little bit neater. I'm going to put it right about here, and I'm going to duplicate this. I can duplicate it using Alt. So I can Alt, click, drag. Notice these magical green lines that pop out. Okay, so these lines allow you to get a hand on what if it's actually aligned with it. So it's a very nice feature within InDesign. Let's say there's a name field, there's a date field. Go back to the black arrow. Alt, click, drag. How about go back to the text tool, explain. Okay, now this will happen. If you get too much text in a box, you'll have to go back to the black arrow and just stretch it out a little bit. Okay. Alt, click, drag. And you can see that I'm lining these things up. And look at the green arrows between them. This tells me if the spacing is dead on. So if I adjust these and I see those green arrows appear, I know the space between these form fields are exactly the same. Okay, next. How about a checkbox? That one's pretty common. And next one is a drop down. I'll just put drop there. Now, the explanation field is probably a little bit longer, so I'm just going to drop these down. And I'm going to take and draw a box right here. Also, I'm going to clean up the area by going Workspace, Reset Essentials. This will get rid of all the garbage and put it all back to normal. Alright, so that's all I need. I name, a date, explain, check, and drop. Now, what would help is having some kind of frame of reference for Acrobat to actually latch onto. So in other words, if I go like this, and then start arranging these fields, okay, the drop and the check don't need a frame of reference. Just going to move those down though. So that's a super simple form, okay? Just so it doesn't bore you to death. File, Adobe PDF presets, high quality print. And let's go to desktop and I'll call this form sample. Okay, I'll be using Acrobat 7 for this and export. Okay, the next piece of software you're going to be needing is a thing called Adobe Acrobat. So let's go to Acrobat. Now Acrobat, when you launch it on a PC, just launches up. Here, it's up at the top. And up at the top, I got File, Create PDF. Now it'll give you a whole bunch of stuff like create from blank file, create from form, create from single PDF. But what I want to do is create a blank form. So here's forms, and I can say start form wizard. Start with a PDF document. Next. It wants me to tell which one it is. I'm going to go browse and choose form. Next. And hit OK. Notice it automatically went out and found these two fields first because it had an underline. Look, it made it the same space. That's what I was talking about. Sometimes it's good to have a frame of reference because that way it'll automatically produce the forms. Okay? If it didn't do this, that's no big deal. What we're going to do is add some more. Under forms, we have simple things like text field, list box. So let's go to text field and let's insert one. I can click and drag, and I'll call this explain. Is there any advantage to this, to name this? Well, yeah. If you get into advanced forms, you can actually collect the data from a form. So other than that, not really. So here's a check. I saw check in here. So here's a checkbox. Field name is check 1. Now I can add another one. Now there's a check and there's a radio button. Radio buttons come in pairs. So if you have a radio button out here, notice it has a group name. Okay. Now I'll just put this one here and call it rad1. Hit the value of yes, sure. So the group name is rad1. Okay. The button value is yes. Okay. Notice over here, rad1 has yes. Pretty easy. Now let's add another radio button. The group name is rad1. Okay. This one is a value of no. That's how easy it is for the little check boxes and radios. Not that hard at all. Forms. Form tools. Let's go to, I think it's called list box in this one. I'll say show all properties. And in options, I can list the item. So I'll go item. And then add it. Item 2. Add it. And item 3. To preview this, I can hit preview. Here now I can insert my name, a date, explaining. Notice that it starts out really huge and then goes down. I can change this in the properties. Here's a checkbox. Here's a radio. And here's how you choose items. To get out, we can edit layout. Now that I have some text in there, I can double click this and say options. I can put multi-line in here and set a limit for characters. So let's say a limit of 200 characters. Okay. Hit preview, and now I can type all I want up to about 200 characters, and then it stops. And you have to set how much 200 characters is. So it looks like it fits quite nicely. The date field, if you double click on it, you can go to format and choose date. And then you can choose what kind of date you want. Month, day, double year. Sure. I think there's one other form piece I didn't do, and that was a drop down. Okay. The drop down, I think, is called a combo box in Acrobat. Double click on it. Go to Options. Close that out. And this one, it doesn't have to be real huge. It can be about this big, I think. So let's go to Preview. And now you can drop it down. You can choose item 1, 2, or 3. And whatever you choose is going to be prominent in the field placement. All right, so you get all this done. And these are just examples of how you use and create form fields. But if you get it all done, let's go back to Edit Layout. And let's go to File, Save As, Form Sample 2. So I'm going to save it as something else. So what the user sees is this. They don't have maybe Adobe Acrobat Pro. They have something else. So over in the Finder, we're going to go to Desktop, Form Sample 2, and open it just like a common user would. I'll close this one out. This is what the common user sees. Da, 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 da. So 10-3-78. Good. And you can see that if you don't do these forms right, like this doesn't have enough room, you'll have to go back and edit the form. Explain. Checkboxes work. Try out every item about 10 times, because if you release a form into the wild, people complain if it doesn't work. Okay, so that is creating forms. How you edit it, again, is you can go in here and say form. You can edit form. Right here. Now I can go right back into the form. And I can change certain properties, like this one right here. I can make it a little bit longer so it shows the date. By saving it, closing it, and reopening it, you get the form back. For the form date, I would probably leave this, where it goes month, day, year. That way it actually shows up a little bit better and easier for people to understand. Okay, so let's go back to preview, and yep, it actually showed up. 08-09-1978. Perfect. So just a hint, if it doesn't look right, don't launch it. One last thing, text. I find it really annoying that if the text grows like that. So sometimes you could say allow rich text. And you can also set a text preference, like a font size. Let's say instead of auto, I choose 12. So now when you go to preview it and you go to type in it, it's always at 12. If you get too many characters in there, it keeps scrolling on forever. So you might want to put a text character limit on it. And again, that is handled under here, going under options, and put a character limit of, let's say, 20 characters. Perfect. All right, so that is creating forms. Now, of course, if you had a form that's already made, it works the exact same way. I could go out on the internet right now, and in fact, I'm going to do that just to prove everything works. Form sample. All right, so let's look under images. Here's a whole bunch of forms. And let's go to larger than 6 megapixels. Now, when I say forms, I mean you scanning something usually is what happens. You know, you take it to a copy machine and you turn it into a PDF. That's the best scenario for it. If you don't do that, this is just a way of just proving that it works. So here's a form with a creepy looking kid on it. But just know that this is very high res. Okay. It has nothing in it as far as data is concerned. This one does. So we can't use this form. How about blank form examples? And what I'm looking for is something that is complex without being overly complex. Here we go. The traditional form. Perfect. Full size image. Let's copy it and let's right click, save image as. I'll save it onto my desktop called new patient form. Sure. Now this is how you handle it if it's an actual document that's already pre-made. It's a kind of a two-step whammy. File, create PDF from file. Choose the form JPEG. Then go to Forms, Start Form Wizard. Start with a PDF document. Use the current document and hit Save. Let it do its thing. And there we go. Now, before you go editing any of it, what I usually do is just hit preview and see what worst case scenario is. Okay, so in this case, it's not too bad. It needs a checkbox here. Some of these forms are rather big as fields go. But it didn't do a bad job. In fact, it did a really nice job. This one needs to be a multi-line. And there we go. Now, signatures are a different story altogether. I cannot show you that here. What I would do is leave that one blank, and when you do finally print it out, you can then fill in that one. So I usually delete the signature one altogether. You can fill out a signature using a Wacom drawing tablet. It's a lot easier. But if you go to use a field there, it's not going to be good. So I'll just put that out there. All right, so that is creating forms 101 with new forms, old forms, and electronic forms. So enjoy.